Okay, so good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. We, as you know, presenting ESET's EMSC Best Practice webinar today, and I am joined by the wonderful Alex Bryson from ESET, who is the pre-sales guru, quite frankly. But before we really start, I'm just going to take a couple of extra minutes for one or two other people to hopefully join in. We've got a good attendance today from the stats that marketing have shared. But as I say, let's see if we can get a few more people to join in before we kick off. Take this moment as well just to say, of course, that we've got a live Q&A event going while we're doing all of this, and Alex and I will be fielding questions, so please interact as best you can. This is an opportunity for you guys to ask Alex, who typically knows pretty much all the answers, but again, this is your opportunity. Fire some questions. We're going to go through a bit of best practice, initial setup, the architecture, but fundamentally this is your opportunity to see what ESET have got to offer in terms of the management console and to get the best out of it for your benefit and of course your customers. So I'm just going to wait one more little moment or two, and then I will hand across to Alex, and we can start in earnest. Okay, I think it's just turned 11:02. So, Alex, thank you very much for joining us today. Good luck. I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine. You've done this, quite frankly, thousands of times by now, I expect.
But it certainly feels like it.
Yeah, I bet. So, you're on today with some of our valued and trusted partners. These guys are very familiar with Risk IT, the majority of which are currently using ESET. Some of the guys will be using the EMSC at the moment. One or two will be potentially starting to investigate using it, but I think the more customers people are bringing on board, the more benefits they find from having this central management console. So that's enough waffle from me, I believe. Alex, I'm going to hand across to you. Good luck.
All right, thank you very much. Let me just take the screen first of all. Take that screen there, and just to check, Andrew, you can see my screen, can you?
I can indeed.
Perfect. Okay, so what I want to do is I just want to run through, first of all, the structure or the setup of the Security Management Center. Excuse me, just so we understand how it works. The first thing is we have our central security management server. We call it an on-premise server. And that only means that you are responsible for the server, its backend, the Windows operating system updates, etc., as opposed to a cloud version of something where the vendor would be in charge of all of the backend stuff. So what we're looking at is we've got the ESMC server here. The diagram's showing a separate SQL database server and the Tomcat web server as separate components. And that's certainly true. You can do that, but the default installation includes the SQL Express and the Tomcat web server as a single component or a single installation for, on a single server. If you're going to endpoints connecting to your server exceeding or perhaps better to say approaching the 4,000 to 5,000 mark, then you really want to consider, rather than using SQL Express, you want to be using a full fat SQL server on a separate server. So just to give you an idea of the scale of what the server can manage. Now, as far as the server goes, it is responsible for allowing you to have a look at the system, have a look at what's going on, and understand the network, understand what status machines are at. The endpoints have an agent installed on them, and that agent is the communication tool between everything on the PC and the ESMC servers itself. So if there's any tasks or policies that you want to send to the workstation, they go through the agent to the ESET product. If the ESET product, the actual antivirus software or security software has got anything to report back, such as anything that's detected or anything that it needs to tell you, such as the software is out of date or it's not activated or whatever, then that goes through the agent back to the ESET security management server. And we see all of that data, or get all of that visibility within the server itself. So that gives you an idea how it's built. I'm not going to dwell too much on the installation of the server, other than to say that for Windows, there are a few prerequisites. We've got a version for Windows, a version for Linux server. We've got 2 virtual appliances for Hyper-V and for VMware. So there's various ways you can install it, and the documentation is extremely good. If you just remember help.eset.com, you're going to get all of the answers there as to how to install it. We've got the installation process there, and if we just go to there, all-in-one installer for Windows, and I just go for install the ESMC server, you can see it gives you screenshots on how to set it up. Oh, this is the Windows one selected, so it shows you how to set it up. And it's really very easy. It gives you the prerequisites that are required. So it's not too difficult to get the server up and running. If I just go back to the diagram, actually, all you need to worry about really is where this server is put, and to make sure these endpoints have got visibility of that server. So in order to communicate back to the server, we need port 2222 open on the server, and we need the agent to know where the server is based on its IP address or URL. If it's got that information, it can talk back to the server, and the communication can happen. As far as security goes, it uses public and private key encryption certificates to ensure that only the correct agents or only authorized agents are able to talk back to your server. So the communication is there, the security is there, and that's really, in terms of setting it up, all you need to worry about. And as I advise, looking through the documentation on the details of how to do it. Okay, so if I switch to the security management server itself, we'll have a look at what we can do with the server. Now, once you've got it up and running, I always feel that the most important part of the security management center is the dashboard. Once you've got everything up and running, this is what tells you the status of the network. Now, our network, our demo network, is a real mess. I'll be honest with you. We don't take care of it. We never, ever fix anything. It gives us valuable data to show exactly what's happening and what the management center will do or how it will react to various issues and problems. Okay, so on the first tile we've got here, we've got the status overview. Now, as I move the mouse around, you can hopefully see that the various tiles are highlighting, indicating that I can perhaps click on them and get further information. And even for this graph here and sections of this graph, you can see that different sections are highlighting, indicating that I can click on those and find out about the information behind. If I do that for security risks, just click on that like that, then we get a list of the, what was it, 46 machines, I think, that were on that list. All those 46 machines in the security risk tile are listed here. And I can click on Himalaya, I click on that one, say show details. Then we come to an overview page, which gives us information about that workstation. Now, I'm not going to look at these tiles just yet. We're going to have a look at what the security risk for that workstation is first of all. So we click on security risk over here. It's going to take you to alerts, and we can see that the major problem is that the installation of ESET on this workstation isn't activated. It's also telling us that LiveGrid isn't available. A LiveGrid is a reputation database of safe and dangerous files. So ESET can, or the endpoint on the ESET on the workstation can reference the LiveGrid network, ask about a file, and it gets a very, very quick reply as to something safe or not before it needs to address it with the rest of the protection modules. It's also telling us that Windows updates are available. Now, ESET doesn't do Windows updates as such, but what we can do is send a task to that workstation to say, go and get those updates done. So if you've set up a local Windows update server, the endpoints will go to there. If they're just going directly to Microsoft, then they'll go to there for their updates. We're simply sending that task to the workstation to say, I want you to go and do those updates. And this is telling us here that Windows updates are available.
Alex, sorry to interject if I may very quickly. We've had a couple of questions through on the live Q&A, and actually similar questions. So the first one through, is there no cloud-based management console option here with so many users that don't necessarily connect to the corporate LAN nowadays?
There is indeed, or more correctly, there isn't. We've actually got a cloud version of this coming out in December. I'll just briefly switch to that actually and show you. So if I just click on here, under Firefox, I've got ESET Security Management Center Cloud. So this is a cloud version, a fully functional cloud version of the Security Management Center. And I'm actually using this one to build the new UKT03 Advanced Training course. So yeah, it is almost completely identical to the on-premise solution. I just tend to use the on-premise solution because I've got far more data in there, and it makes what we're looking at far more useful. But yes, we will very, very soon have a cloud version of this available. We've actually got a cloud version available now, but it's really designed for end users. It's limited to 250. It hasn't got one of the major functionality features that the Security Management Centre's got, which is dynamic groups, which we'll be looking at a bit later. But yes, we will very, very soon have a cloud version of this available.
So at the moment, and again, to give you some context, some of our partners have got the ESMC live and on a little virtual machine in Azure, for example. So it was not necessarily on their local corporate network. So the endpoints are essentially communicating off network, aren't they? They're going up to the cloud administrator. So could you just explain that side of things as well?
Yeah, basically, if we talk about it from the endpoint point of view, we've got the ESET product on there, ESET endpoint antivirus, ESET endpoint security, whatever it is. On that endpoint, we've got the ESET management agent. Now, it, as I mentioned earlier, is the communication tool. It is a piece of software that communicates back to the ESMC server. Now, where the server is really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We refer to it as the on-premise server, simply meaning that you are responsible for the security of Windows, the setup of Windows, the installation of ESMC on that server, and really all of the back-end stuff. I mentioned about the SQL database, the SQL Express, and the Tomcat web server. How you set it up is down to you. It's your responsibility. But where it goes doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's in Azure or AWS or on Rackspace or on the broom cupboard under the stairs, wherever it is, provided these endpoints can communicate to it on port 2222 and can see its IP address or URL. How you set it up, how you make it available really doesn't matter. Obviously, with the cloud version, all of the back-end stuff is ESET's responsibility rather than yours. You just need to log into it. So yeah, it's a question of you making that server available to your customers so that their machines can see it.
Thanks, Alex.
That's all right. Okay, so what we're going to do is going to switch back to the on-premise solution. As I say, simply because I've got much more data in this console than I have in any of the other two. Okay, so on the endpoint, we can see that there's updates available. If I just go back to the dashboard, click on the dashboard again there. Okay, and you can see over here, product version status. We've got 118 machines on our network which are outdated, and only 50 have got the current version of the agent on. Now, I'll be honest, probably about 90% of the machines that are on this server are VMs that don't exist any longer. It's just that we like to have them there because it gives us that valuable data for demos. So if I click onto the next tab, Security Overview, unresolved detections. So we've got 40,000 detections which we haven't sorted out. Again, you can click on the tiles. You can find out any information you like, just as I did earlier about the data behind. Detections by severity in the last 7 days. We can click on that. And I quite like the two tables at the bottom here. Let me just move the Teams thing out the way. Down the bottom here, we've got two tables, top 10 computers and top 10 users with detections in the last 7 days. And I think that's possibly quite valuable information to help you guys direct perhaps the idea of security, cybersecurity training, or perhaps where the weaknesses are across your network. You can see typically what's happening over the last 7 days and where any kind of weak spots might be in terms of training perhaps, but you've got that data there to use how you will. Okay, I'll just move that down again. If I click on computers, now, apart from these first two tabs, every tab here can be configured the way you like. We tend to leave them alone so you see what you get out of the box. And I'll show you what we can do when we get to custom dashboard in terms of the structure and the layout of the dashboard. Now, everything that's on the dashboard is actually a report. And before we dive down further and look at the dashboard again, I'm just going to briefly show you what we've got with reports. So if I click on reports here, now we're going to get a list of categories. You can see somebody in our tech team has created that report category up there. I've created my own report category, and any reports that I write, I drop them into this report category, this group here. And then you've got something like 170 different reports that ESET supply upon installation, or indeed in the version of the cloud, upon setup of the environment. Covering all aspects, such as you've got automation, computers. We'll come to dynamic threat defense. I'll mention that briefly shortly. Firewall detections, etc. So if we just click on last scan, then you can see information on all of those machines which have been requested of an on-demand scan recently. I can generate that report as a PDF. In the case of the on-premise solution, as a PostScript or a CSV format if I want to. I can also schedule this report to be delivered to me. If I click on schedule there, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, or based on the activities of a dynamic group, which I'll come to. As I say, I've already mentioned them, but a dynamic group is essentially a filtered group. You set the membership rules up, and if a workstation matches those membership rules, it'll join that group. And as it joins that group, we would automatically get a report produced. So we could create a dynamic group to say ESET's detected a threat. As it joins that dynamic group, we get that report produced straight away. And as I say, we'll have a look at those or how dynamic groups work in a little while. And then delivery. For the on-premise solution, we can have them delivered to email or to a file. And for the cloud version, we can have them delivered to various email addresses. Okay, now I'll show you just how granular you can get with the reporting towards the back end of the dashboard. So if I just cancel that, go back to the dashboard there, just disregard that. And then if we click on this section of the graph to find out what machines are in the security notifications, detailed information, again, we get a list of all of those workstations that are in that part of the graph. And if I click on Kraken there, I can say show details, and that will take us straight back to the overview page. And here you can see that some information about the workstation. You can see which static group it's a member of, which we'll have a look when we get to the computer tab. You can see what IP address it's reporting back, how many policies it's a member of. And in the case of this one, it isn't a member of any dynamic groups, but they're listed there. We can see that the product is out of date. If I click on that, then you can click on Update ESET Products, and that will push an update to that workstation to get the security product to the latest version. If I click on Basic just while we're here, you can see that it also gives us some information about the operating system and the device itself. And on hardware, we're getting a huge amount of data back from that workstation about how it's set up, what hardware it's got, CPU, storage, chassis, display adapters, peripherals, audio, RAM, etc. And we can make use of that information either by creating a report, or we can create a dynamic group based on these conditions, and it will report back to us or change the conditions based on what we're trying to do, which again, I'll show you a little bit later on.
Alex, if I may interject again, we've got flurries of questions coming through. It's brilliant. I only looked away for a second, if I'm honest. One of the ones that's come through, as you know, well, some of these partners, of course, have already got an EMSC, either an on-premise or a little virtual machine in Azure.
Yep.
The process to move across, if they choose to do so, into the ESET hosted equivalent.
Yep.
Could you touch on that for us at some point, please?
I can, yeah. I've spoken to one of the guys in the technical team about how we currently do it to get from the Security Management Center to the current cloud, the ESET Cloud Administrator. And we've got a process to do it. There's nothing official yet. ESET haven't released any documentation on the official process to do it, but we've certainly got our own methodology of doing it. So I can't believe there won't be documentation. I think it's going to be a very clear-cut thing to do, because ESET, we've been really screaming to have a cloud version of our management center for the last 4 or 5 years, to be honest. So we're fully aware that customers want to move from the on-premise solution to the cloud version, and I feel completely confident that ESET are going to have one of their fantastic KB articles or help page documents on exactly what the process is to get from the on-premise solution to the cloud version. So I can't tell you precisely what the best way of doing it or what the best practices are on that yet. We haven't been told ourselves yet, but as I say, as confident as I can be, there's going to be a set standard procedure to get from the on-premise to the cloud version.
Okay, so this is like a preview of what's coming, if you like, which is, again, one of the reasons why we've had this live event.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that in mind and forward planning, as we tend to do, a great question again's come in. So with an Azure ESMC, would you recommend using the Azure VM's external IP address or a domain URL? Now, personally, I suspect the domain URL would make more sense in case that IP address ever changes. Would you agree? I
think so, yeah. Obviously, Azure is almost certainly going to be and remain a static IP address. In actual fact, the demo server that we're looking at now You see its URL is app.eset-demo.co.uk, and we're running it from port 8443 because we've actually got the encryption server running on port 443. So we've used a URL. I think that's more appropriate. I think it makes much more sense. And just from a human perspective, we understand and remember URLs better than we remember IP addresses. So from that perspective, yeah, but it makes not the blind bit of difference whether you use an IP address or a URL, so long as you know what it is. And of course, it's going to be in your favorites bar anyway. So it doesn't really make any difference, to be honest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so but I suppose, yes, if the IP address does need to change, it's easier to change it and then continue to use the same URL. So I suppose that's probably another benefit of it. Just one other thing on terms of migration. I just want to go back to this diagram a second. It's the agent primarily that's going to have a problem talking back to the new server, because this agent has the IP address or URL of the current server that it's supposed to be talking to, and it has the correct certificate information to talk back to that server. Now, if I tried to connect my endpoints using my agent to your server, even if I knew its IP address, I'm not going to be able to do it because my agents don't have the correct certificate. So that's the first thing. So if we imagine that over here on the right-hand side, that this is actually the ESET cloud server rather than the ESET on-premise server, then in order to get this endpoint down here talking back to this server on the right, as opposed to the server directly above it, we need to replace that agent. We need to have that agent replaced with one from this server so that it's got that talkback information and it's got that certificate on it so that it knows that it's allowed and authorized to communicate with the server on the right as opposed to the server directly above it. So the primary thing is to have a new agent on those endpoints, and then you're going to be able to at least have those machines talking back to the new cloud server as opposed to the on-premise server. Other things such as the policies that you've set up, or the tasks you've set up, or the static groups or dynamic groups you've set up, they can be imported in, but that's what I'm hoping we're going to be provided documentation on in order how to do it. The on-premise to on-premise migration is essentially back the database up, back the certificates up, and transfer those to the new server. There's certain steps there, such as the certificates and the database, which you don't have access to the on-cloud server. So as I say, that's why I'm kind of expecting that documentation to arrive for that migration process. Okay, so if we go back to the Security Management Center, looking at the hardware there, we can see all that kind of hardware information on that workstation. And if we just go back to the overview, there is a hardware tile there which gives you some information on the workstation, nice and visible there. RAM not applicable or not available, that's simply because VirtualBox machines never seem to report their RAM back, but of course real machines do. So you can at a glance see how much memory that workstation has got. Looking at the configuration, now I haven't got anything there at the moment, so let me just open up my ESET software a second. So if I just open that up, if I want to look at the configuration on an endpoint, I press F5 and I can see the back end of the software. If I click on cloud-based protection, because that's a little less crowded, cloud-based protection, I meant that one there. We can see how the workstation is configured. And if we want this information, we'd have to call the user up, we'd have to disturb them, remote onto the workstation to have a look at how it's set. We don't need to do that. We can simply click on request configuration there. The agent will pull that configuration back from the workstation, give us an entry in this log, so we can click on that and see exactly how that workstation is set up directly from within the management center without disturbing the user. Okay, so applied policies, if I click on applied policies there, now this is showing all of the different policies which were applied to this workstation. And I think the best example here is if you've got an organization who says that they don't want any of their employees looking at social media websites, then we can set up a web control policy to do that. We can block all social media websites, and that's fine. We'll apply it to the top level of that organization. Problem is the marketing team within that organization would require access to that stuff in order to do their job. So how are we going to deal with that? Well, what we can do is we can set another policy up which allows access to the social media websites. That, as it comes down the tree structure of the organization, would come to the marketing team, apply that policy, which would override the block policy that was set earlier, and then allow that team and that team only to look at the social media websites. And I think you get a sense of that here. You can see all of these policies are applied to the all group within our organization, and the bottom two only apply to machines which are in the Team ESET UK group. So it's a very hierarchical structure as to how you can apply policies and how you can make them work and interact with each other. Logs, really quite useful if there's some kind of issue or problem that you need risks help or our help with to solve. System Inspector, I haven't got one there at the moment, but essentially it takes a snapshot of the workstation in terms of drivers, programs loaded, etc. And we can use that to identify any kind of issues. And if we ever ask you for a log or an ESET log collector tool, you can run that directly from the workstation. You click on log collector tool, run log collector, it'll run that on that workstation and provide the log here so you can download it within the Management Center. Again, being able to do that without disturbing the user.
Alex, another question. I'm quite enjoying myself here. There's a couple of bantery conversations going on as well, but a great question through from Nigel here. So can you give some visibility on the level of integration with the DESLOC encryption solution and also 2FA? Now I know there's been some changes with what was the old DESLOC Enterprise server. So
yes,
go for it.
Well, the answer is, now let's be very, very specific here. First of all, DESLOC, as I'm sure you all know, is a company that we purchased way back in 2016, and the product is now called ESET Endpoint Encryption. Now that product is a completely separate product to the ESET Security Management Center. It has its own console, and it can manage 4 major aspects of encryption. It can manage full disk encryption, file and folder encryption at the local level, email encryption, and encryption for removable, let's get my tongue around that, sorry, removable devices. Okay, now it is a separate product, and the machines managed by the ESET Endpoint Encryption Server cannot be managed through the ESET Security Management Center. However, we do have a brand new encryption product, which is called ESET Full Disk Encryption, which can only do full disk encryption. And that product can be managed through the Security Management Center. We can set up encryption, we can deactivate endpoints through the Security Management Center, and if somebody's forgotten their password, we can give them a recovery password through the Management Center. So it depends what you're trying to do as to which is the best encryption product, but there is one which can be managed through the Management Center.
I think fundamentally, Alex, so you're aware, most of our resellers who have gone down the ESET encryption method have gone for the full disk encryption. We've sold very few of the file and folder only. It's you know, full disk or nothing. I'm trying to think of anyone who hasn't opted for full disk. Okay. So that is primarily what everybody's gone with.
Well, in that case, there's one more question which remains, and that is, what about well, presumably a laptop, generally it is. What about the laptop? How is that laptop used? Is it a shared laptop? If it's a shared laptop and you've got a number of different users accessing that laptop, then you don't really want the same encryption password that everybody knows. You turn the computer on, it says, what's the password? You enter the password, and everybody that uses that laptop knows what that password is. A better environment for a shared laptop would actually be for the machine to ask for the username and password, and then it can be unique to that individual. So that and ESET Endpoint Encryption can manage up to 126 plus the admin, 127 separate username and passwords for any individual workstation. So there is no need for any individual to know the username and password of somebody else for that shared laptop. That's really the consideration you've got for ESET Endpoint Encryption, full disk encryption, against ESET Full Disk Encryption's full disk encryption, because ESET Full Disk Encryption, try and get my letters right, only has a password. So it's one single password per device. So it depends on the circumstance of that device or that organization as to which one would be the best suited for that particular customer.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all right. Okay, so log collector tool, we can see how to get that. If we move on to possibly the next most important one, installed applications, we can get the Security Management Center to tell us about all of the software that's installed on a workstation. And you can see here we've got Notepad++ version 7.55 there. And for the ESET products, it's telling us again that on this particular workstation, the ESET product is out of date. And we can click on Update ESET Products, and it'll push that update task to the workstation to get to the latest version of endpoint security. And I'm going to come back to this because I'm going to show you how, using the dynamic groups, we can identify another piece of antivirus software on the workstation, remove that antivirus software, and get the ESET software installed automatically onto the endpoint, all through the use of the Security Management Center. And that's the best way we've found of looking at demonstrating how dynamic groups work. And then I think the only other thing really to have a look at on this section is detections and quarantine. If there's anything in the quarantine or the detections of this workstation, if there's anything this machine's detected, I should say, we can see it here. If there's anything that's been quarantined, we'll be able to see it here for this particular workstation. Okay, so I just go back to the dashboard there. Now, moving on, for the on-premise solution, there's a tab called Security Management Center server, and it's really just reports based on the activities of the server itself. Ours isn't particularly busy, so the graphs look like they've got massive spikes on them, but to be honest, it's only a 3 there, and there's never really much going on our server. For the cloud version, you don't get that. You don't need to worry about it. The back end is ESET's responsibility rather than yours. If we move on to antivirus detections, yeah, good, I have got something there. This is really where you can begin to see the EDR capabilities of the Security Management Center. We can identify what problems have been occurring, which machines have been occurring on, when it occurred, etc. And we can see here that daily summary of detections in the last 30 days, there's a spike there of 3. If I click on that and then say show detailed information, we get a list of all of those workstations which are in that section of the graph. And I can see it's got the computer name, the static group, the time it occurred, the detection type, which was a potentially unwanted application, what the process was that caused it. It was Firefox, so presumably Firefox was downloading it, the hash of the file, etc. And if I click on that, then we can say show details, and it gives us a much cleaner view of just that particular threat. So there we got the computer name, when the problem occurred, the hash value of the file, what the name of the file was, the URI, and the process name that caused it. So again, it was Firefox that caused it. Excuse me. So you've got a lot of EDR information about threats which occur on the workstation. And if it is something benign, if it, for example, if it's something that somebody's written which has been detected as a threat, or you know it's safe, then you can click on Create Exclusion. Once you've looked at the problem and you know that you've dealt with it, or you know that ESET's dealt with it, you can click on Resolve to mark that particular issue as resolved, which is, as I said, something that we don't do because we want to make sure we've got that data there. So if I just go back to the dashboard, much the same for firewall detections. If I click on that one, we see all of the firewall detections which have occurred across the last 30 days or the last 7 days. And again, I can click on that one, detailed information. I get a list of all of those machines in that section of the graph. And if I click on that one, show details, again, we get a very clear EDR picture as to what's been going on there. The name of the PC, the last time it connected, when this particular problem occurred. We've got the process name that caused it to occur. They've got the source address of the attack, source port of the attack, and the target address and port of the attack as well, and which protocol was being used. So, as I said, a lot of information you've got there to help you diagnose how this attack happened. Let's just go back to the dashboard there. Okay, now, dynamic threat defense, something I haven't really mentioned yet. I mentioned live grid earlier when we were looking at one of the computers. A live grid is a reputation database. Let me just open the ESET software again, and I'll just show you what live grid is. So I'll just go to there, close that. If I go to tools and then running processes. Okay, so while that loads, that's just going to load every process that's running on my workstation. And we can see here that for the top one there, it's got a very high reputation, a very high number of users, discovered 6 months ago. It's a Microsoft app, so it's hardly any wonder that it's got a good reputation. If it was something malicious, though, some kind of new threat, then its reputation would be extremely poor. The number of users would be very, very low. Time of discovery, perhaps a day ago at most, maybe. And it would be marked as malicious. Now, what LiveGrid would do is if a workstation discovers something, it'll ask LiveGrid and say, look, is this a threat? And LiveGrid will come back and say, yeah, it is. If it's something new that it doesn't know about it, then the reputation will and cache will upload it to LiveGrid, say, do you know about this? LiveGrid will say, no, I don't. I'll analyze it. 2 or 3 hours later, it's analyzed it and it's in the database for ESET to look at. What it won't do is report back to the workstation and say, yep, that file you sent me, it was a threat. What dynamic threat defense does is it's an extension of that. It does report back. It analyzes that threat in less than 5 minutes, typically, and then it'll tell every other workstation on your network or on the customer's network that that file is a threat. So you're kind of reducing that 0 day to 2, maybe 3, 4 hour window about a brand new threat to say, look, this file is a threat. And even before there's any new signature for it or any new module updates or anything like that to check that brand new threat, your machines already know about that threat. And what this table here is doing is giving us information about those machines which have top 10 computers which have sent files to the dynamic threat defense and the top files which have been sent to dynamic threat defense. So again, you're getting that really useful feedback as to what's been going on in terms of that particular aspect of ESET. Next one, ESET applications should be useful for us. It's telling us about all of the different versions of the ESET software across the network and what our upgrade path would be were we going to do it, which, as I said, we're not, because we want that old data there. But in a real environment, you'd obviously hope that everything was as up to date as it could be. And in order to get maybe 5 or 6 machines that might be out of date, you can come to here. You can see we've got 300 odd machines which are out of date. I can click on that. And I can say update installed ESET products. That'll push an update to all of those workstations. And in one simple process, you've got those 5 or 6 machines or whatever it is, having a task to update to the latest version of the software. So it's really easy to manage the versions of software, make sure everything's up to date, and just keep an eye on exactly what the status is. Okay, so custom dashboard, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this graph here, first of all, so we've got some space there. Yeah, move that. Okay, so here's our dashboard. Now, we can change the structure of the layout of this dashboard, first of all. I can come up to the gear on the tab, and I can change how that dashboard is laid out, however many tiles I want. I'll leave it on the maximum, just lay it out the way I want there. And I can add any graph I want, or any report I want, I should say. Just click on there. And if I come down to antivirus detections like that, click on last scan like that and say OK. Then we get that graph added. Now it's a bit small really, so I can click on its gear and expand it out to any of the available tiles which might be available. And of course, if you do that on a dashboard with a little less space on it, I'll just minimize that one. There, oh, hang on, just create a new tab like that. Just create a new tab like that. Dashboard 2, that would be fine. You can see we've got the tiles there. We can change the structure and the layout of that dashboard to whatever we want. And as I said, if I just click on there, antivirus detections, go down to last scan again. As I said, it's a bit small, so we'll just click on there. We'll expand it down a little bit, expand it down one more, and just make it fit the way we want. Basically lay out the dashboard exactly how we want it, so it's as clear as we need it to be. So I just go back to the custom dashboard there. The report down here is the report that I mentioned when we had that brief look at the report section. It's essentially a report that we wrote. It's going to tell us about any workstation that detects a threat as it detects it. Basically, as a machine detects a threat, this table will be updated. So when you add a report to the dashboard, it becomes dynamic. As new data occurs, you're going to get a new entry in the log as it's happening. So we don't need that refresh button up there. The table will simply be updated. So you can imagine using this as a very effective wallboard. And as I say, you can see exactly what's happening. Again, we just don't clear out threats. Otherwise, this will be clear, and you'll be able to see those new threats as they're happening.
Alex, can I jump in again?
Please do.
Thick and fast. Okay, so another question. So regularly get my remote access support software listed as a potential threat because of the low number of users, especially when it gets updated. How can we improve its reputation? And I've got another one when you've covered that as well, if I may.
How can you improve its reputation? That's really down to the way that ESET works. If it's been regularly marked as a threat, that's what's been said in the question, is it?
Yeah, it's listed as a potential threat because of low numbers of users.
Very often, the number of threats or it's being marked as a threat is because of other software that's supplied with the download. But if it's marked as a potential threat, so long as ESET's allowing it to run, that's all you really need to worry about. Because if it's got a very, very low reputation in terms of the number of users, that's never really going to improve until they can market the product better and get more customers using it. Because what the number of users is, or the reputation is based on, is the number of ESET customers that have got it, and therefore how popular the product is. What we can do to make sure it works, if ESET is blocking it, which it doesn't sound like it is, we can mark that particular app, or not the app, the folder the app runs from, as an excluded folder from the scanning, and therefore allow that program to function normally. So we can exclude it from the scanning of ESET if it was being detected as a threat. But it sounds like it's just that the live grid is reporting it has got a very low reputation.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So
thanks.
Certainly make it work anyway.
There is another question that came in a little bit earlier on that I somehow missed in the flurry that came through. So what happens if a user shuts down their computer while ESET endpoint security update task is in progress? Can it recover from that, or are you working? Good.
Yeah, no problem. It'll fail basically because the machine's shut down, but that's fine. When it starts up again, it does a cursory check to see if it's up to date. Actually, it checks once an hour to see if there are any updates, and if there are, it'll download them. And there's usually 5 or 6 updates a day. So if that one's failed because the workstation shut down, okay, it hasn't got it, because what it does is it downloads it, and once it's got it, it then uncompresses it and installs it within the ESET software. Let me just show you that actually. So if I just open the ESET software up again, press F5. No, I don't want F5. Sorry, I want help and support. I want about, and then we can go to install components. If I just maximize that window. So these are all of the modules which can be installed through the download process, the definition download process. The first one there at the top there is the definitions themselves, or the signatures themselves. All of the other modules can be downloaded through that download process. And as I say, once they're downloaded, they're uncompressed and they're installed. So if it fails to download, that's fine. I'll just do it again. And because it's been off for, let's say, half a day, it's going to get the later version rather than the version it was trying to download. So yeah, it's not a problem. It'll sort itself out. If it doesn't, just let Risk know, or let ourselves know, and we can help you sort it out. There's various tricks we can do if it does break, but generally speaking, it just recovers perfectly well itself.
Cool. Just a slight follow-up question to the previous in regards to that remote access solution. Basically, what happens when the end user is told, can you just, click this link and then we'll do a remote session? It flashes up for them, so it frightens them. Basically, they're getting a notification from their antivirus solution stating, oh, this may have a potential risk, but they're being told by their IT guys, we're sending you this little link, double click it, and then we'll be able to get on your screen and help you. So that's where he's coming from on that question.
That sounds, I'm guessing they are downloading some software to make it work. Again, that could be, if it's a yellow warning, it's almost certainly potentially unwanted application. That is, the remote connection software has some other software associated with the download. So it's not actually the remote software, it's that other piece of software that ESET's picking up. And ESET very often picks up threats in installers, which are not the program you're looking at, but that other potentially unwanted application.
I think what I'll do, I'll get one of our technical team to reach out to the particular partner in question here and dig into that one a little bit more, individually.
But I mean, what we can do is for potentially unwanted applications, ESET as an organization, we are not allowed to block those applications. We can only show a warning, and the reason for that is it's actually legal software, much as it being software that you probably don't want. We're not allowed to block it. You can change a setting within the policy so that you can say, if it's potentially unwanted, you can block it or allow it, obviously, or whatever you need to do. So yeah, I think if we can find out the specifics of that, then your guys will be able to offer solutions to that. But there are ways of dealing with it, and we can prevent or reduce the number of warnings that ESET gives, which may help in those sort of cases.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex.
All right.
Can you take another question as well?
Yes, of course we can. Yeah.
Good. Right. So this question's more around billings and integration. So I'll paint you a picture. Customer's got I don't know, 700 endpoints out there, carved up between various different end users, and they have their EMSC in place. They also have a particular CRM system and a billing system and an RMM solution. And
Yeah.
what they want to achieve is that when they add an additional license to an end user, that a billing system automatically bills out for that. I know you guys have got integrations with Datto, I believe,
Yeah.
ConnectWise, but how deep do those integrations go?
My colleague Dan would be the best person to speak to on that. He knows the integrations of the various datos, and I've forgotten the other one now. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and so he knows much more about how they work than I do. But if what we're looking to try and do is get data into the ticketing system, then depending on how your ticketing system works, it might well be that the notifications can do it. Because notifications can indicate things such as license limit alert or that sort of thing, and it can certainly send an SNMP trap. It can send data to a syslog server and that sort of thing. So it might be something again that your guys can have a look at, or we can help you with, as to how we can get the data out of the Security Management Center. I think we need a little bit more specifics about the various apps, but there are potentially ways of doing it.
That's, I think, broad enough of an answer for the time being. And as we say, we'll look into these individual cases, you know, individually for obvious reasons. Cool. Thanks, Alex.
That's all right. Okay, so we had a look at the dashboard. Let me just turn that warning off there. So we've got a list of all of the computers. So on the computers tab, I am on the all group at the top there. I do have the show subgroups box ticked, which means when we're on all, we're seeing all of the groups and the subgroups below it. Because obviously a machine can only be a member of one static group at any one time. And so having the show subgroups box ticked is allowing me to see everything. And you can see on the right-hand side there, the state of the various machines. So it gives you that very broad overall picture as to what's going on. If we take Address-Dia there, for example, it's gray, it's got a green tick, everything was fine. No problems, no updates, nothing wrong whatsoever, but it hasn't connected since March last year. So there's clearly something wrong with that machine as to why it's not communicating back to the server. We can click on that, we can say show details, and we're straight back to that overview page to understand exactly what's happening with that machine. And obviously in the case of it not connecting, we're going to need to talk to the user about it and see what we can do to have a look at that. Go back to the dashboard. You can see other such things as last connected, detection, security product. All of that information you need is there right in front of you. And if you want that information for any particular customer, then if you're just going to come down to company one, click on that. Oh, there's nothing in that one. Sorry, pick on one that's got something in it. Click on that one. We can see all of those computers within just that group if we want to. And again, it's showing all subgroups underneath that, but its starting level is clone computers there, so we can see just those computers. So it's really easy to identify everything as an overall picture or anything as an individual customer that you need to look at. Detections, broadly the same as the computers tab, except that the right-hand pane is showing you detections. And again, we can click on that. We can click on any individual static group there and get the information for any individual group. And we can click on that, show details, and it'll take us straight back to that EDR page for that particular threat. Okay, so in terms of having a look and understanding what's going on, that's what the Security Management Center offers. But like anybody's management console, you really need to be looking at it to see what the problems exist, which is why we've got the notifications I mentioned earlier. So if I just click on that one. Now, the one I use in training is if I go for malware outbreak alert there, notifications will tell you what's going on through various methods, such as the SNMP trap or syslog or email. Now, this particular one is malware outbreak alert. And if we look at the configuration of this one, you can see it's an antivirus detection issue. That's sort of issues we can detect with notifications. And the events we can detect are status update on Security Management Center, dynamic group changes, or ESET events managed on the computers. And if I come down to advanced settings, we can see the reasons why this one would be triggered. We've got 100 antivirus attacks or alerts within a 10-minute time period, and that's when the notification will be triggered. and it would tell you either via that SNMP trap, via an email or a syslog server, or to the list of email addresses that you've specified in there. And for this particular type, if you want to change the message, we can do. We can click on the edit there. We can put a $sign into the subject, and you can see it brings up all of the system variables which are available to you, making that subject message a little bit clearer as to what the actual problem is. And again, for content, exactly the same. You can change the text. We can put that $sign in, and it's going to give us that information, or those system variables we can add to the content of the email, making it a little bit clearer. Okay, so as I said, in terms of looking at the system and identifying issues and problems, that's what ESET's got. What I want to do now is I want to just have a look at those dynamic groups with you. And the way we're going to do that is we've already seen that ESET can report back the software that's installed on a workstation. What we're going to do, I'm just going to go back to this diagram here. We're going to imagine we're deploying the software out to a new customer, and they've got some other antivirus package on there. What we want to do in this case is we want to get the agent installed onto their workstations. Now, the agent isn't in any way, shape, or form antivirus software, so it's going to be able to sit alongside anybody else's antivirus software, and it's going to be able to see what is installed on that workstation. So either via group policy or any other RMM tool that you might have, or however you want to do it, we get the agent deployed. We've got those workstations talking back to the Security Management Center server, and we can identify what's going on. So go back to the Security Management Center server there. What we want to do is we want to set a template up to look for that software. So if I go to there, Dynamic Group Templates, and click on Detect Clown Win. So I've set one up already for Detect Clown Win. We'll have a look at how that one works. Click on Edit. So give it a name and a description. If we look at the expression, then we can see this one says install software application name has a prefix of Clown Win. And the way that works is if I click on Add Rule, we can see all of the top level reasons why a machine would join that dynamic group. So for example, hardware. Is it running on battery power? You might want to change the policy of a workstation to prevent it from running an on-demand scan if it's running on battery power. We've got mass storage there. How big is the hard drive? If it's a certain size, I don't know, we might want to change a policy for something, I can't think what, but you can certainly detect that sort of thing. We've got logged in users. So if we've set a device control policy up to block access to USB devices, but we want to allow it when the administrator is logged in, we can do that. Is the administrator logged in? Yep. Okay, then we can change the policy, and I'll show you how we can do that. But the one we're interested in for this example is installed software. Click on application name, say OK. So you can see there we've got a duplicate entry there. Install software application name is one of, it equals, it doesn't equal, it contains, has a prefix of, and we tend to find has a prefix of works really well to identify software. And in there we're going to put in, if I just start typing, I don't know if Clown Win's actually there. Yeah, Clown Win. So we've got Clown Win there. So, and if it's not there, you can just type in what you need. So we're looking for Clown Win. Okay. And if we want to take that bit off, as we've done on the top version, we can just delete that text there like that, and it's going to be looking for Clown Win free antivirus. Okay, I'll just cancel that because we've already got it set up. So what we want to do now is set a dynamic group up based on that template. So if I click on computers there, and we've got one set up already underneath the small business group there, but all we do to create the group is you click on the gear, say new dynamic group. If I do that, is you give the dynamic group a name, click on template, and you can either choose existing, where we choose that Clown Win that we've had a look at, or you can click on new and set it up directly from within this window. So I just click on cancel and have a look at the one we've set up. So there's ours there already, Detect Clown Win. So that's based on the template we've just looked at. Now, a dynamic group is just a filter. It doesn't do anything. So any machine on our network is going to join this group if it's got Clown Win installed, or at least if it's already in the small business ICT support group, it would, because it's a subgroup of that one there. So any machine with Clown Win is going to be in this group. And at this stage, nothing's going to happen. It'll just join the group. What we want to do is we want to apply a task to that group. So we've got a tasks, click on new like that, client task. And the task is, we'll say, call it remove Clown Win. We give it a description if we want to. The task category really just filters the tasks out into that sort of operation. I'll leave it on all so you can see what we get. And that's the range of tasks that we can perform on a workstation. And if we come down and scroll down a little bit to software uninstall, click on continue. And then we can choose the package from the list. If I click on that one there, and imagine that says ClamWin, say OK. And then it's saying, OK, do you want to uninstall all versions of that package, or do you just want to select the version that you've got there? Alternatively, I can click on the gear there, or the menu there, click on the third-party OpSWAT uninstaller, and that will have a go at uninstalling that AV software. So I just click on cancel and disregard that. So we've now got, if I go back to the computers tab there, to the right group, we've now got a task associated with this group. Once we've assigned it to that group to say, detect ClamWin. Yep, okay, and the task associated with that group is to say, go on and, in fact, let me just do that task again because I just want to show you something else. I'm just going to go to tasks again and do that again. So we've got a new client task. And if I go to settings, oops, hang on, ESET Security Management Center, software uninstall again, settings, I want to say uninstall that. Imagine that says ClamWin again. And then if I click on continue, it gives us a summary. If I click on finish, it then says, do you want to create a trigger, which is a bit of a miss that I wanted to show you. So I say, yeah, I want to create a trigger. And I'm going to put in the expression I like for the trigger description is cron, and then repeat every minute. I'll explain that in a second, every minute. Click on continue, that'll bring us down to the target. I want to specify the target that this task is to apply to. Now I could select computer, and I could specify any of the individual computers and run the task on that computer, but I don't want to do that. I'll just shift the Teams window out of the way there. Put that down again. I want to specify a particular group, and the group I want to specify is that, where is that one? Small Business ICT, there it is. I want to apply it to that Detect ClamWin group. Okay, so I click on there. You can see that it says Detect ClamWin. I won't click on OK because I don't want to apply it to that group, but we would click on OK. Sorry, I do want to do that. 2 seconds, just do that again. I'll stick on the Edinburgh office where it's not going to do any damage to anything. So just click on OK, but we'd apply it to that group that says remove ClamWin. Click on continue. It says trigger type as soon as possible. It gives us an expiry date, always of a month away. I can click on that and I can change the date there. But the problem with that is you're likely to forget to change that. So at some point, this task will stop operating. What I prefer to do is to select the cron expression there and change that cron expression to R space R/1 space star space star space star question mark star, and that essentially just means repeat the task once every minute with no expiry date. Click on continue. It gives us the advanced settings, which you don't need to really need to worry about. Click on finish, and then that group, that remove ClamWin, has now got that task associated with it to remove ClamWin, and it will repeat itself once every minute. Once the ClamWin software is removed, then that workstation or workstations have got no right to be in that group any longer because they don't match the membership requirements. The condition being you've got to have ClamWin installed. It now doesn't, so it's got to leave that group, and it would join another group that that you would have set up, which is that one there. I haven't done it properly, but you get the idea from the name there. If you've got no AV software installed, so we set the rules up to look for ClamWin and to look for ESET, and if neither of those installed, you join this dynamic group. And for this group, we're going to apply a different task, which is click on new client task. We want software install. Click on continue. And then we can choose the ESET license. And as a reseller, you can find your customer's license in here. If you're an MSP customer and you've got the integration set up between the Security Management Center and your MSP portal, then all you need to do is just find your company. I'll click on Loch Ness Tours there, and it'll list all of their licenses. So you can just select the right license that you need to do there. So once you've done that, you can choose the package you want to install, select the correct version of ESET for that workstation in the correct language that you require for that particular customer. and then that will push that install. I'll just click on cancel there.
Alex, is this
Hello.
a good time to interrupt again?
It is, yeah, go on.
Good stuff, good stuff. Okay, so 3 quick questions come in succession there. So first one, when are dynamic groups going to be available in the new cloud portal?
December,
thank you very much. So straight away from the off.
Yeah, basically because I'm guessing the person that asked that question is familiar with ESET Cloud Administrator, which is our current cloud-based platform. Now, it does have dynamic groups, but they're a fixed set of dynamic groups. We can't edit them, we can't change them. We get what we're given, and that's it. Come December time, ESET Cloud Administrator is going to morph into ESET Security Management Center in the cloud. So all of those dynamic groups and capabilities which are available in the Security Management Center will be available. As I said, have I still got that one loaded? As I said, yeah, just reload that. If we go to, I'll just put the password in again, hang on a second.
And I think, Alex, as well, for the benefit of everybody who hasn't lived and breathed ESET for the last 11 years or however long you've been there, the on-site management solution that was you historically called the remote administrator morphed into the ESET Secure Management Center. I think because of all the user feedback ESET have taken, that everybody just wants a URL to log into and to manage absolutely everything with all capabilities. Over the last 4 or 5 years, as far as I know, ESET have had a go at doing this a couple of times, and what you've ended up with wasn't quite good enough.
I agree completely.
That's getting fixed in December for an all singing, all dancing, fully clouded up. ESET hopefully are going to pay for it. That question's come up as well. So Hayley, if you're here, we will be having a chat about making sure there's no huge uplift in pricing. But this is what everyone's been asking for. All the capabilities you need in a cloud portal.
Exactly it. It is the same as the Security Management Center on premise. Now, I've been with ESET since version 4 was the latest product, so I've gone through all the way through version 4, through version 5. If you all remember that, with the remote administrator local to the PC. I've gone through that. I've gone through version 6 with when we called it ESET Remote Administrator, and then when version 7 came out, we called it ESET Security Management Center. And I'm pleased to say, come December time, I think they're changing it to version 8, and it's going to be called ESET Protect and ESET Protect Cloud, just to keep us all on our toes. But it is going to be this. It is all singing. It is all dancing. It can do absolutely everything the on-premise version can do. And I'm actually, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but I'm actually using this to develop the training. It's going to be the training server for our advanced ESMC, or sorry, advanced ESET Protect Cloud training course. So yeah, it's what we've been waiting for. It's got everything, and it can do everything.
Cracking. Okay, so the other 2 questions that came through. So will the update installed ESET products just update the products, or also any outdated agents?
That update task that I mentioned will only update the ESET product, because to update the agent, you do it in a slightly different way. So that button that we click on to say update the ESET product will only, if we go back to the Chrome, go back to that diagram, it will update the ESET product. That operation will not update the ESET agent. However, that's just as easy to do. And this is actually a minor change I found between the two. For ESET Security Management Center, so we're talking about the on-premise solution, you go to More, you go to, sorry, no, you don't. You go to Tasks, you go to New Task, Server Task, and the task type you want is, it's not server task. I always get that wrong. Go click cancel. Disregard that. We'll go to New Client Task, and they want that one there. Security Management Center Component Upgrade, and that will do such things as update the Security Management Center to the latest version and update the agent to the latest version. So you've got a task to push the agent to the latest version. On the cloud version, it is, and I must admit I couldn't find it because I was looking for exactly that option. It's not More, it is Tasks, and then if we go to New Client Task, the task type is Upgrade Agent. So I was looking for that security management center upgrade component, couldn't find it, and there it is there, it's upgrade agent. So it's just as easy to do, and you can push that out to the machines. But yes, the button that we looked at does only update the endpoint product, but it's easy enough to get the agent upgraded, and indeed the security management center, if it's the on-premise solution, upgraded to the latest version.
Okay, thank you. And the final one, and I've got a couple of similar-ish questions to this one. So how often do the endpoints talk back to the management server, the console? Is it going to be any different whether it's the on-prem or the cloud one? I suspect not. But how often do they talk?
There is a difference there between the on-premise and the cloud version. The on-premise answer is I can go to policies. I can say I want to create a new policy, give it a name and a description, go to settings. I want to select the management agent, if I just scroll down a little bit, as the component that I'm talking about. And here I've got connection interval. I can change that down to, if I change that to seconds, I can change that down to a minimum of 10 seconds and up to, as you can see, whatever I want there. Okay, so the minimum is 10 seconds. That's way too quick. If you've got more than about 20 machines, you're going to really upset the server. We tend to use that when we're just checking things, setting things up, or doing training. Having to respond back in 10 seconds is great, but typically it's a minute. And certainly for the ESET Cloud Administrator, it is set to a minute. Okay. For the cloud version of ESET Cloud Administrator and the ESET Security Management Center, that value can't be changed. And I think it's 10 minutes for the Security Management Center in the cloud. So you've got the option to change it on the on-premise solution. You don't on the cloud versions.
That is one of the differences where that is dictated. It's every 10 minutes. How does that for configuration updates? So if you're changing a policy for, company B's, ESETs, you're changing the policy, you're pushing that out. How quick before that actually gets applied to all those endpoints?
Well, actually, the phrasing you use there is possibly slightly wrong, because if we go to the diagram there, it's the agent that talks to the server and pulls any data that's available to it. So it's more of a pull from the agent rather than the Security Management Center pushing it. And the answer is, if we make a change to policies, then we have to wait for that agent to talk in, receive its update, and say, right, okay, I'll tell the endpoint to do that. If it's 10 minutes maximum, because that's what, or default maximum, should we say, because that's what the ESET Security Management Center in the cloud is set to. Whether they're going to allow us to change it or not, I doubt it, because obviously they don't want tens of thousands of machines talking back every minute. So it'll happen as soon as the agent talks back and receives that update, and then it'll do it. And then the next talkback time period, it'll report back that it's done it or it's doing it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so where were we? We were looking at the removal of the AV software. So I just pulled that down. So if I just go back to the computers group, where did I get to? What we did was we set up the dynamic group to detect that there is no AV software. So if I just come down to that group there. So on the no AV group, we're on that group there. We've set a task up to say, if you're in this group, I want you to go and install the ESET software. So the ESET software gets installed. That workstation has got to leave that dynamic group, because now it doesn't match the membership requirements for that group, because it's now got ESET installed. So it'll just move itself to whichever dynamic group it needs to be. For example, it'll be sitting in the Windows computers group. And actually, incidentally, you can be a member of any number of dynamic groups, provided you match the membership conditions for that group. You'll be a member of it, such as if your Windows computer, you're in there. If you've got an outdated operating system, you'll be in that group there. But you can only be a member of one static group, and you can move between those static groups. So once the ESET software is installed, it's just going to sit in whichever group it needs to be in. And you'll see from the data here, if we take Adrestria again as an example, we can see the cube icon there indicates that the agent software is installed. And once the ESET software is installed, you've got the desktop icon there too. So you'll know that the two pieces of software are installed. Now, so hopefully that gives you a really good idea as to how dynamic groups work and just how powerful they can be. There is one issue with what I've shown you in terms of uninstalling other people's AV software. If, for example, they've got an anti-tamper password on, or something like that, then it's going to be really difficult to remove them. And indeed, antivirus software doesn't want to be uninstalled. It doesn't want to be. It wants to protect itself against malware trying to do exactly that. So if it was that easy, there's obviously some kind of issue there. So it does make it difficult to remove. And as I said, if there's an anti-tamper password there, it can be really difficult to do it. But there's another way we can do it. If we go to tasks, rather than selecting that uninstall task, we've got, where is it? There, run command, that one there. If I click on continue, we go to settings, and this allows us to push any command we like to that workstation. Any batch file, PowerShell script, VB script, MSI, executable, whatever you like. And it runs on the workstation at system level privileges. So whatever script you write there, whatever command you push is going to run it at the highest possible level. And it is possible so for Sophos, for example, and for other AV software to write a PowerShell script to remove the AV software, even if there's an anti-tamper password set. And because the command's running at system level privileges, it can do it. So if you can't remove the software one way, you can almost certainly do it this way. And this obviously gives you a lot of power to be able to run any command you want to the workstation. It also gives the Security Management Center the ability to do things perhaps it shouldn't be able to do, such as becoming a form of software management. We can see what software is installed, we can see what version it is, we can set rules up to say if this condition is true, such as if Notepad++ is at version 7.55, then I want that removed through the process of a script. We can have another dynamic group to say there's no Notepad installed. Okay, then this script was going to install version 8 if that was the latest version. So you can use it as a form of software management or patch management, even though it's not actually designed to do that. And that's the power of the dynamic groups and the power of the tasks. What we can also do is look at policies. So if I just click on cancel there and see how the policies can be applied to different dynamic groups, etc. So if I click on policies there, I want to create a new policy. So I'm going to click on new policy there. And if I click on, we'll give it a name. I'll give it today's date. So I'll call it 29/10, and I'll just call this just cloud. That'll do. Just so, I only put the date in there just so that I can identify easily against all of the other ones which we've created in various demos. So if I click on settings, I first of all want to select the policy type. And in this case, we're going to be looking at ESET endpoint for Windows. Earlier, we looked at the one for the ESET management agent to look at the interval there. So we leave it on Windows, click on that like that. And I want to go to detection engine, and we'll just go for cloud-based protection. So if I want to turn on ESET Live Grid Feedback System, for example, turn that on. And you notice as I do that, we get a little blue dot there indicating that this policy has been marked as read-only. And by that, I mean not even a domain level admin would be able to change this setting on the workstation locally. It can be changed, of course, by you editing the policy. It can be changed by another policy further down the tree structure overwriting it. So, for example, if we go back to the social media idea I mentioned earlier, we set a policy at the top level of the organization to block access to social media websites. But we want the marketing team to be able to look at them. So having this blue dot here means that it's read-only, and as it comes down to the marketing team section, that policy would be allowed to be overwritten. Okay, so we can do that. The lightning strike, that means that the policy is set, locked in stone. It cannot be changed, not even by another force command further down the tree structure. It's locked at that setting, the first force command that comes across. So it's very, very easy to control exactly what you want the policies to do and how you want them to interact with each other. And of course, doing something like this, blocking access to the domain level administrator is potentially going to cause some issues if you're trying to do some work locally, but that's okay because we've got the override mode there. You can say allow override by local admin. Maximum override time is 4 hours, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you need. And after that time, it will revert back to the previous setting that dictated by the management center. And that should give you ample time to get back to the server, set the value to the change that you know is required to make that work for you. And then when it comes to assigning the policy, we can assign it either to any individual computer, any static group, or any of the dynamic groups as well. So if we think about device control, we could set up a device control policy to block access to USB devices. We could set a dynamic group up to say, if the administrator is logged in, then I want you to join this dynamic group. And on that dynamic group, we can apply a policy to that group to say, actually, USB drives are allowed. So as the administrator logs in, USB drives are allowed, and as he logs out, we can reset it back to block. So you've got that kind of level of control as to how you want the system to work, how you want it to react to who's logged into, to what conditions are set. Threat not handled there, for example, there's another one. If I go to there, there's a task we could apply to that, which could isolate the computers from the network. And it's only going to be able to talk to the Security Management Center. So if it comes across a potentially unwanted application, ESET by default is going to hold back from doing anything with it until it's asked you what it wants to do. And then you can isolate that computer from the network, check what's going on. And when you're happy, just put it back onto the network with it by pushing a simple task to it. But in terms of the tasks there, as I say, I'll just move that window out of the way again. Click on cancel there. We just go to assign. In terms of the policy, we can apply it to any part of the network we need to, really creating that structure and that control that we want based on whatever static group, whatever policy we've got, or whatever dynamic group we've got there. So hopefully that gives you a flavor as to how the dynamic groups can be used to set conditions, to check for conditions. The tasks and the policies can be used to change the environment or the setup of a PC based on those conditions. Okay, so how can we get to the point where we've got this level of control? What we need to do is, if I just go back to the diagram there, we need to get this control. We need to have the ESET product and the ESET agent installed on there. Now, we've had a look at the fact that we can put the agent on there, and once that's on there, we've got that control to detect what other software is installed. But the other ways we can do it, we can install the ESET agent manually. We can install it alongside the ESET product. We can be sat in front of the computer to do it. We can do it remotely. It really doesn't matter which order things are done in. It doesn't matter if the ESET product is there already, and you're simply installing the ESET agent to be able to have that manageability of it. It doesn't matter if there's somebody else's AV software there, and you're sat in front of the computer, you remove it manually, or whether you remove it with their own management center. The agent will still see that that software is gone. It will still react in the same way by saying, oh, that software is not there. Move it to the no AV group and get the ESET software installed. Or if it's a brand new, fresh rebuild, just install the agent of the ESET product as a single combined installer and get the whole thing done in one go. And the way we do it, or the way we can do it from within the Security Management Center, is if I click on the installers there, I'll just disregard that. You can see all of the different installers we've set up and created during various demos, and it demonstrates, I think, that you can hold various agents to do very different things. You could have one agent or one installation setup per customer if you needed to, and the guy's going to site, probably you've got it on a USB drive, but if they need an update or need to replace it, whatever, you can just come to the management center and download it by going to there's one that Raj has created. You can click on download there and download the appropriate one for that customer, run it on the workstation, and it'll install. Now, in terms of creating the installer, we've got the option of creating an all-in-one installer, the agent live installer, which is essentially just a batch file, which pulls down the agent from our repositories, configures it with the correct certificate information and server talkback information, and then it'll be able to talk back to your server. And that's why I mentioned right at the start that if we're going to move from the on-premise solution to the cloud server, then you need to replace that agent in order to get the new certificate. And this is how you do it. You go to the new server, create a new agent installer, and then run that on the workstations, and they'll be talking back to that new server rather than the old one. Now, we've got group policy there as well. That's going to create your INI file, which you can give to group policy along with the MSI for the agent. It'll go away, install it, and once it's done it, you've got that machine talking back to the management server to be able to configure it. Okay, if I just click on the all-in-one installer and show you that one, you can see here we can select the management agent, the security, the security product, and if you like, you can do the full disk encryption. Now that is ESET full disk encryption. It is not ESET endpoint encryption. That's the distinction that I made earlier in terms of the two products. If we click on, let me click on the security product actually, so we get the options there. If we click on a security product, then you can see you can select the license you want. You can select the version of the product you want. Obviously, you'd want the latest version, and it's got the default of the latest version there. Select the license agreement, and you can select any configuration policy they might have set up already. So it starts off by having that policy when it runs the installer. If I click on advanced, then we can give the installer a name and a description. We can also select which group we want that workstation to go into when we run it. So we'll go back to the Edinburgh office. If we say this is something for the Edinburgh office, click on that one, say OK. And when that installer runs, it will push that workstation into the static group Edinburgh office straight away, and that machine will pick up any policies that are within that group. For the on-premise solution, you got the server host name there. We've just got it set up for our domain within the Azure environment, and this is very often a mistake I make. I very often forget to change that when I'm installing it on a local workstation or a local VM. I forget to change that, and it's ends up not being able to talk back to the server because, as I said, I've got the wrong server host address in. And that's what I said earlier. So long as the workstation can see the server on the IP address or URL you've given it, and port 2222 is open, then that's absolutely fine. Now, so they're the various different ways you can install it. And I think to finish off, just bearing in mind the mistake that I often make when I'm setting up VMs, we've installed the agent on a workstation and it's just not communicating back. What we want is, if I click on here, we want to see it appear in the list. And if we haven't installed the ESET endpoint product, we're going to at the very least see that agent icon there, see that talkback time of just a handful of minutes ago, and know that that workstation is talking back correctly. But if you've installed the agent, the installer ran correctly, and it's not talking back, what do you do? How do you know what's gone wrong? Well, there's a very, very useful file on the workstation which you can use to identify what's going on. So if I just come to the C drive here and click and go to program data. So I've got program data. And I would really recommend you make a note of this file because it is an extremely useful diagnosis tool. We want program data, ESET, we want remote administrator, we want agent, ERA agent application data, logs, click on it properly would help, logs, and that's the file there, status.html. So if we open that up, now this is telling us exactly what that talkback status is. We can see which dynamic groups the workstation is a member of. We can see that it enrolled OK, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 green boxes. That's exactly right. We can see the name of the server. In my case, my workstation is talking back to the ERA server or ESMS server in Bratislava on port 2222. You can see the certificate information they've put there, and any policies that it's got there. So we've got that full information. And if there's anything red there, in the case of the mistake that I often make, I would see that goes team local ESET, and I go, oh yeah, okay, I've forgotten to do that, and I can change it. So that really, I think, is a good summary of the management server, what you can do with it, and a very, very quick look at the diagnosis that you can do to try and identify any kind of connection problems. Any questions there that you want me to have a look at that anybody asked in the last few minutes?
There have been 1 or 2 that have come in, Alex. To be fair, we're doing well on the questions front. So it's actually coming back to how often let me get it the right way around this time, the agents on the devices are pulling updates from the management console. Now, couple of comments on that one. Obviously, if it's set to 10 minutes, let's assume everyone's on the All Singing All Dancing Cloud one in December. Yeah. 10 minutes in a couple of scenarios could be forever, quite frankly. So if you've got a phone call you're on the phone from a customer, you're trying to troubleshoot there and then, you push a change through, and just so happens that happened, you know, literally a few seconds after the last time it sent its update. You've got to sit there for 10 minutes with a stressful customer.
No, you don't.
Good answer.
Because all you do, because I'm on the, notice I've switched to the cloud version. All you do is go to computers. I'll just disregard that. That's the computer in question. That's the one that's causing us grief. All we do is send a wake up call and it's sent a wake-up call. And I've tried this on the cloud version. It works really well. It's going to respond usually within a minute or two and talk back. So if you have set up any new policies, that wake-up call will cause it to talk back to the server now, and it'll pick up any new change. So yeah, you can correct that. The default time is 10 minutes for the cloud version, but if you need to get it to talk back now, you can do that. Wake-up call will do it.
Okay, I think that very eloquently answers that question. I'm reading another one. Sorry, that was why my delay came in, and I'm not sure if I necessarily get the question. So, if an agent is set to report every 10 minutes, as we know, and literally a few seconds after the last check-in, an attack happens to that particular device.
Yeah.
You carry on speaking, Alex. So what happens at that point?
Well, first of all, don't forget that the Security Management Center, on-premise or cloud, it's not its job to deal with threats. It's its job to tell you what's happening and to set policies, etc. It's the endpoint's job to do it. And let me just load a slide up to demonstrate that. So I'm just going to go to one of the training slides. Go on SharePoint, on OneDrive. So just give me a second to get there. Shared documents, training. I want external, technical, online, and I want that one there, around about slide 12, if I remember. Okay, 7, right, okay. So this diagram is showing all of the modules that the endpoint itself has got to deal with threats, okay? So it's the endpoint's job to deal with threats. It will deal with the threat, and if you've got dynamic threat defense, it will be able to send that data up to the cloud network, analyze it further, and identify whether that's the threat. But this is all of the stuff that the ESET endpoint antivirus, endpoint security can do to identify the threats. And without going through them, it's got a very, very high level of protection with all of the different modules that we've got there to identify threats and deal with them. As soon as that 10 minutes is up, it's going to talk back to the cloud administrator and say, look, I dealt with this threat. And you've got that information. And in fact, something I didn't show you, so if I go back to the Security Management Center server there, whoops, I've closed the window, so let me just open it up again. So if I go to consoles, Security Management Center server, once it has reported that threat back, then what can we do? Well, I think I showed you earlier on the dashboard, we can identify what has happened and how it's happened. So we go to computers, and no, I won't. I'll go to detections actually. No, I'll tell you what, I'll go to the dashboard because I know where the threat is there that I'm looking for. So I go to antivirus detections. We can see these spikes, top detections in the last 7 days, for example, detailed information, and just to have something I can find. But as you saw when we looked at the dashboard, we can click on detections for any individual workstation through the dashboard. We'll click on this one, show details information. We can see that's the name of the computer, that's when the problem occurred, that's the name of the threat, the URI that was run, and the process name that caused that threat to run was Firefox. So the answer to the question is, what happens if that threat occurs just after that 10-minute time period? Fine, ESET will deal with it. And then when it talks back, you've got that data on the management center to have a look and see what actually occurred. And you've got notifications, don't forget, that if there is an alert, such as a massive outbreak attack, it's going to send you, if you set that up, it's going to send you that notification anyway.
Thank you, Alex. Brilliant answer as always. Okay, so one of the last things, best practice, and I imagine it's a relatively tricky question because every customer is different, but if you had to come up with, right, default configuration for 95% of people, is there a list or a checklist or a pre-built component or something we could leverage?
I suppose there sort of is and there sort of isn't. There are certain things I like to cover when I do training as to best practices. And the first thing is, if we're looking at, people often ask me, what is the default policy for ESET? What should I set up? And if we have a look at policies, we've got a new policy. I'm going to go to settings so we can have a look at those. And if we go, yeah, so I'll go to the endpoint for Windows. That's not what I want to do. Let me cancel that and go back. So I'm just going to close that up. Notice that says custom policies there. I'm just going to close that up. Underneath there, we've got built-in policies with all sorts of different stuff that ESET has applied and obviously supplied with the installation of the server. Now, people often say, should I be selecting some of these built-in policies? What should I be doing? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? The answer is, for the vast majority of customers, if we click on New Policy, then and go to Settings, then whatever values this policy has got are the default setting, and this is what the endpoint gets when you install it. So if we go back to that diagram, let's forget about the management of the ESET server. Let's forget about having the agent on there. All we've done is we've installed the ESET product onto that workstation. We haven't configured it to do anything at all. The values and the policy settings you'll get are what you will see when you click on New Policy and don't touch or change anything. So whatever these values are, these are the default setting, and they are very, very good. In fact, that word, they're balanced settings. They're the best options for the use of resources on the PC, for protection, and that's really the level you want to get. What you want to be doing with policies is tweaking things and changing things under certain conditions, such as exclusions or device control or anything like that you want, but the default policies that are supplied without you doing anything are fantastic. Now, there is one other thing I wanted to say. If we go cancel that, as I said, you've got built-in policies and we've got custom policies. Now, I actually don't like using the built-in policies, and if I can find one, if I go for endpoint for Windows, click on that. Let me just find one, built-in policies. I want Windows, sorry. Just bear with me a second. Wait, after. Nope. Okay. Right. So if I go to ESET endpoint for Windows, I'm going to click on that, and that's the built-in policy. So I want, yeah, that's right. So I'm just trying to find a policy. Very often you find that if I edit that, this is probably not a good example, but there's 10, 15, 20, 100 different changes within that built-in policy, over and above what the default is. And because of that, I don't like using built-in policies. I much prefer to create my own custom policies. And as I think you've seen earlier, you can build that policy structure up to specify what you want. If you look at the social media one, we've got a block policy, we've got an allow policy. We've got a, if we have a look at some of the ones we've got, if I go to the management agent, ESET management agent there, we've got a policy that sets the agent password up. We've got a policy that removes the password. We've got a policy that reports all applications. So if we do those two there, agent password, report all applications, and talkback time. I could go to new policy, go to settings. I could change that connection interval to, I don't know, let's just say, I'm just thinking 100 minutes. Click on save. I could then come down to advanced settings, report non-installed applications, and set up, put a password in there. So I've done 3 different things within that policy. And some of my colleagues like to call, do something like that and say, this is the default policy. To me, I prefer to set up the policy to do the password, a separate policy to do the agent talkback time, a separate policy to say report non-ESET installed applications, and kind of build it up with separate policies. That way, when I look at the policy, it's very, very clear what each individual policy is doing. Oh, right, that's the one that set the agent password. Okay, that's the one that's reporting all applications. So it's easy to see and identify rather than having one all-encompassing policy to do everything. And that applies to Windows as well, to the endpoint for Windows there as well. Build your policy structure up, get the policy to do one thing or one group of things, such as do your device control for that customer, for that team, training room, trusted zone, you can see there, and just do it that way rather than relying on a single policy to do everything. I hope that kind of makes sense, but step-by-step process, build it up a policy at a time to get to where you want.
No, that makes sense to me, Alex.
Excellent.
And I actually think that's all the questions so far covered.
Excellent. Okay.
So I feel, is this the end for us at the moment as it stands?
I think so. I mean, it's a fairly good summary of what the management server can do, and we tend to find that hopefully it kind of whetted your taste buds in terms of what the server can do. And if you're not already using it, then you can see or hopefully get a glimpse as to the kind of capabilities and the power of the server. And with the imminent cloud version of this management server,
yeah, that's the missing piece of the puzzle that
I think so. Yeah,
lots of people have been, jumping up and down a little bit. It's been one of the reasons some people haven't gone for ESET, to be brutally honest with you, as I'm sure you realise. But there are quite a few of our guys who've got the management console, and I think the cloud version is, well, hopefully going to save them a bit of money, because they're investing in paying for Azure virtual machines at the moment.
Yeah.
Just very hopeful that the pricing from ESET comes out isn't horrific or anything more, full stop, to be honest.
Well,
so
to be honest, as far as the current cloud version goes, from what I understand of the costing, and I don't get involved in the costing, you could almost argue that the cloud version is actually cheaper than the on-premise solution. And that's because you haven't got to provide the manpower to keep the server up to date, to do the security on the Windows server, update ESET Security Management Center when there's new updates, and all that kind of stuff. It's not your responsibility, it's ours. So you could almost argue it's going to save you money by having the cloud version. So yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully, yes. Hopefully, yes. No, I've learned some bits and bobs. I'm really happy with the engagement that we've had on here. I have got some follow-up actions to do. And actually, the very last question's come in from my good friend Spencer. Final question. What's the actual official release date for the full cloud version?
Well, let me, before I do know the answer to that, but before I answer it, let me tell you what ESET are like. They have a tendency of delaying things because they want it to work when it's released. They don't want to release it prior to, because they've got this particular deadline. They say, right, we must get it out the door. It must go on that date. If they decide it's not ready, it's going to be delayed. But you've seen the cloud administrator, sorry, the security management center in the cloud. It looks very polished and finished. And as I said, I'm using it. I've had no problems with it at all. So I believe that the date is valid and will be stuck to. I could be wrong, so don't hold me to it. And the answer is that December the 9th.
December the 9th.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it'd be nice to get a bit of good news to finish this wonderful year off, wouldn't it? Let's be honest. But no,
yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, Alex. It's been really informative from my point of view. Really happy with the engagement we had. Some follow-up actions to take from me, and some questions as well to go back on and answer separately. So I think it's probably a good juncture to close it off. And once again, thanks for your time, and I hope you've all enjoyed it as much as we have.
Yeah, no problem at all.